Hey everyone, my name is Tim Burke. I am the IT Evangelist here at Spoke, and today I am here to talk to you about when and how to scale your IT team. Really excited to be here today. Got a decent amount to cover, and bear with me for just a second here. I'm new to this software, and I'm trying to figure out how to share my screen. Uh, All right, folks, bear with me. I am really struggling to actually share my screen here. Action, polls, analytics. Oh, and surprise, surprise, I have to install a Chrome extension. Give me 2 seconds. All right, I am back, and now it looks like I can actually share my screen. Awesome. So here we are. So today, again, we're going to be talking about kind of when to scale your IT team. And I get a lot of questions about this from customers, from prospects, from folks that I know in the community. It comes up a lot, which is why we wanted me to cover it for my first webinar topic. So first off, just want to throw some caveats out there. And this is kind of a little bit of CYA for me, but it's really important, first off, to recognize that every organization functions a little bit differently. And so some of the suggestions I have here are like super generalized and may or may not apply to your organization. However, hopefully it at least gets you thinking in the right way, thinking in the right kind of frame set about how you staff your IT team. Now, obviously, these are going to be more suggestions rather than hard and fast rules. Please don't take this slide deck and bring it to your boss and say we need 5 more people. This is definitely not what we're designing it for. We're just hoping to give you folks a little bit of insight on at least how I've approached hiring in my professional career. And then, of course, there are many, many, many other things to consider that we're not going to cover today. We're just going to cover the absolute basics, and then we would love for you folks to chime in with questions at the end. So with all of that being said, everyone loves to talk about ratios. And ratios are certainly one way that you can look at your IT staffing. Now, I've seen ratios anywhere between one IT person to 30 employees, all the way to one IT person to 250 employees. And depending on your organization, that right ratio probably falls somewhere in the middle. These are both pretty kind of heavy outliers for like very heavy staffing and very lean staffing. And most organizations I see will fall somewhere in that 1 to 75 to maybe 1 to 150 range. Now, that ratio doesn't really mean much until you actually look at your technology stack and look at how complex it is. So if you're a very simple organization, say that you just have G Suite and you're supporting Chromebooks, I wouldn't call that a very complex organization. And so you may not need to staff as heavily as an organization that's, say, in a regulated environment. Say you're in healthcare, say you're in finance, and a more complex environment. So say that you have, you're supporting both Windows PCs and Macs and Chromebooks and Android and iOS. The more complex your stack gets, the more that you're probably going to have to staff. And then finally, it's really important to actually think about how much support your users need. Now, we're talking about your end users here, and this is a little bit of a tough topic because there are different levels of what I would call technological competence in organizations. And in some organizations that are, super tech forward, they have a lot of end users that will try and solve problems on their own, that will take care of a lot of that tier one kind of level help desk on their own, without reaching out to IT for help. Now, in other organizations, they may have users that, need more assistance, need more training, and all of that. And again, this completely depends on your environment. So, certain organizations can do 1 to 250 because users are, really good at solving their own problems. Some may need to do 1 to 30 because, their users need a lot more training and are using some unfamiliar technology. So I may sound a little bit like a broken horse here, or a broken record. Not broken record or beating my own horse, but it truly does depend. It's a bunch of questions to really ask yourself. Now, there are obviously good times to hire. So what would a good time to hire be? So a lot of, small business, even medium business, will start off their IT journey with a managed service provider, with an MSP. And often they will either grow out of that, not have a great relationship with the MSP, not love the level of service they're getting, whatever it may be, that for whatever reason they're coming off their managed service provider and looking to in-house their IT department. Great time to hire. Now, of course, an obvious time to hire would be backfilling your staff. Now, if you had someone leave who was a single point of failure, was the only person that knew about that specific part of the tech stack, someone that was just indispensable, obviously you're going to want to hire to backfill that person that left. Now, finally, we hear this a lot from our customers, is that they're expecting rapid growth. So, I've talked to companies that have doubled in size in less than a year. I mean, I've talked to companies that have doubled in size in 6 months. And if you're expecting rapid growth, what you really need to do is you need to go and you need to get the organizational-wide hiring plan. So whether you go to operations, whether you go to finance, whomever it is, in order for you to plan the growth of the IT hiring plan, you need to see the hiring plan for the entire organization. And hiring plans always change or in flux, so it's good to have some sort of regular sync up with HR, with finance, with whomever. But if you're expecting to hire 200 people in the next month, IT should know about that for a lot of reasons, staffing being one of them. Obviously, you're going to have to buy equipment, you're going to have to buy licenses, you may have to build out office space. There are a whole bunch of growth things that IT is involved in. But for the purposes of today, that hiring plan will really help you for staffing. And using those ratios that I discussed earlier, you can actually go to your direct manager, whoever it may be, and say, like, listen, we're at, our help desk, each individual help desk person supports 200 people. We're planning on hiring another 200 in the next quarter. I think this is a great time to hire someone else for the help desk. And when you actually can back that up with numbers, so you can back that up with the numbers from the company hiring plan, and you can back those up with numbers from your own ratios, your own metrics from your help desk, so things like time to response, first response, time to close, etc., then you can make a really nice data-based kind of informed pitch to hire, to actually grow out your team. Now, there are, of course, many other things to consider when you're talking about hiring. Needing some sort of technical specialization is one of them. If you have a really complex VMware deployment, you should probably have someone on your team, if you don't already, that knows VMware really, really well. Their technology has become so diversified these days that there are a lot of different technical specializations. And so, you might have one person who's really good at managing G Suite, another who's really good at managing your Amazon Web Services, another who's really good about building images for PCs. All of these are specializations. And in smaller organizations, yes, you will definitely find, that kind of Swiss Army knife IT manager that can do everything. But as you grow, you're going to want to look for folks that have more specialization and, invest as a team into those skills. Another great reason to hire, of course, is covering other time zones, other locations, or other languages. And I found, that we see a lot of companies that will expand and build out an office on the West Coast or the East Coast, or start building out an office in Europe. And you can get away in a small office without dedicated IT help, but you will reach a breaking point without a doubt where you need dedicated IT help in a location. And again, if we're talking about ratios, that ratio could be anywhere between 20 employees to over 100, but you will reach a breaking point eventually where you need dedicated IT in every location if they keep growing. Of course, covering time zones is another thing. So especially if you're supporting a remote workforce, having your team staggered so that you can do at least a little bit of kind of follow the sun support is really, really important. So just being able to cover different time zones. And then finally, especially if you're expanding internationally, having support that covers multiple languages. This one I feel like is almost even more important than the time zones or the locations, because if IT doesn't speak the language of the user, there's honestly not much you're going to be able to do to help them. Now, there are other specialized skill sets within the IT field. So something like a data analyst or a business analyst that may not be a true technical specialization, but be a little bit more of a business-focused specialization. And hiring someone like this, these needs would come more out of business requirements and your relationship with the respective departments. But at some point, you may want to look at hiring a business analyst or a data analyst, something like that, as well as all sorts of other specialized skill sets. Today, we're not even really going to talk about security, because I consider security hiring and staffing to be slightly different than IT. But security could definitely fall under one of those specialized skill sets. Now, of course, there's nothing more stressful than being an IT department of one. And so in my past, I've started at companies and I was the IT department of one. And it's great being solely responsible and being able to kind of impact change so quickly as such a small IT department. However, vacations are super, super important. And if you're the kind of IT department of one and you can't take a 2-week vacation, and this is something funny actually, Don Pulowski, the CTO at University Tees, and I talked a little bit about this on the IT Kit podcast. And so if you want to hear us go into a little bit more detail on kind of hiring and IT leadership, definitely check out the IT Kit podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you find your podcasts. Don and I are on episode 4 talking a lot about this, that as an IT professional, you should be able to take a 2-week vacation. You should be able to turn your phone off, and you should not come back to a burning building. And even if an IT department of one is kind of limping along and fulfilling all of the requirements, there are definitely times when they'll need cover, they'll need backfill, and vacations is definitely one of those. So another really, really great thing to consider as you're looking at your staffing plans. Now, as you look at your staffing plans, there are many different resources that you can bring in to augment your team. So first off, I happen to not be a huge fan of them given my professional experience, but there are managed service providers, and managed service providers are really great to bring in for certain needs around staff augmentation. They're generally okay at covering kind of help desk level needs, and they're good at providing very, very solid coverage. And so with a managed service provider, you don't have to worry about that one person taking vacation. You don't have to worry about, calls at night or whatever, because in general, managed service provider will be augmented enough with shared services that they'll be able to cover most of that. So a managed service provider is definitely something worthwhile looking at. for staffing augmentation to solve some IT challenges. However, they're not always the best choice. And so you can think about bringing in, some sort of contractor, some sort of consultant, and they're great again for kind of short-term staff augmentation, and especially if you need a more specialized skill set. So if you've never built out an office before and you just need someone who's really good at doing, new build networking, new build conference rooms and AV, etc., it makes sense to bring in a contractor or consultant for a few months to help you with that. So there's that. Now, again, contractors and consultants, I feel like, have their place with IT staffing plans. But in my personal opinion, if you're going to be holding on to a contractor or a consultant for more than a period of, say, 3 to 6 months, it's probably time to actually bring in a full-time resource. And so full-time resources, the full-time help desk is always nice to have, always good to have that coverage. If you're looking farther up in the stack on kind of more complex roles, of course, you have the full-time systems engineer. But there are also other ways that you can augment your staff. And there are a lot of ways that folks just tend not to think about. And so some of my best hires, I actually originally hired as interns and then promoted them through. And they turned out just absolutely fantastic. Hit the ground running, even very, very junior, and then made their way up. I know in a lot of higher education, in universities and colleges, they do a lot of staff augmentation with student workers. And especially for student workers that are studying in the IT field or MIS or whatever, not only can they gain a lot of knowledge by working tier 1 or tier 2 help desk or similar for the university IT, but they're really easy augmentation to bring in. They don't cost a ton of money, and at the end of the day, everyone really benefits. And so once you've got to that point where you realize that you need to make some sort of hiring decision or some sort of staffing decision, your next decision is, what sort of resources do you bring in? Is it an MSP? Is it a contractor or consultant? Hopefully just short term. With contractors and consultants, my biggest problem is that generally you spend a decent amount of time, just like any other new hire, onboarding them and training them and all of that. But at the end of the day, when their contract is up, they walk away and they take those skills with them. And so your skills kind of walk away when you invest in a contractor or consultant. Personally, as long as I can manage it, I would rather hire a full-time employee, invest in them, and incentivize them to stay so that those skills don't walk away. Now, as we're talking about hiring itself, we could probably do a whole nother webinar just on hiring practices, interviews, all of that. But there are certain key concepts, and again, throw back to the IT Kit podcast. Don Pulaski and I spent a bunch of time talking about this. But in general, at least what I look for when I'm hiring. So first off is general attitude. So bringing a positive attitude to work every day, whether it's kind of an end user facing help desk function or a more back end engineering, security, whatever function. It's really important to bring a good attitude to work every single day. And at times, at least, the stereotypical IT departments have not been the best about this. And so I really focus on it personally. Now, to add to that, customer service skills are obviously incredibly important. And what do I mean by customer service skills? So it's that attitude they bring, of course, but it's their patience, it's their way to diffuse more difficult situations. A lot of IT truly is customer service, and you want your team to be known as being friendly, of being approachable, all of that. And then finally, you really, really want to look at the actual culture fit of who you're hiring. And so by culture fit, I mean, do they fit in with the culture of the company? Will they get along with others? Are there shared interests, et cetera, et cetera? Now, culture fit can be a kind of very nebulous term, but in general, it in my mind is at least that kind of gut feeling when you're about to hire someone about whether you just think they're going to fit in with the team or not. Now, aptitude is incredibly, incredibly important for any IT hire. And so by aptitude, for me at least, I consider aptitude really just the ability to learn. Studies have shown that most IT skills are out of date in somewhere between 2 to 3 years' time. And you're looking for a hire that knows the right resources, knows the right ways to find information, is comfortable challenging themselves to actually learn new things. And a lot of that, funnily enough, goes with Googling skills. So good IT professionals generally have a very good understanding of how to find pertinent information on Google. And one of the ways that I actually have tested this in the past is during the interview process, I will sit down a candidate in front of a computer, Google open, and I will ask them some obscure question about some obscure system that I'm sure they have never touched. And I really just want to see, in the heat of the moment, are they able to formulate the right search term to get that first right page of results? And then from there, are they able to actually sort out the resources, sort out the wheat from the chaff, and find the right resource, whether it's a vendor-provided resource, a third-party resource, whatever it is, are they able to Google their way around and figure out an unfamiliar problem? Familiar problems are always very easy. It's always very easy to tell someone to turn it off, to turn it back on again, whatever it may be. But really, where I see the aptitude is how they deal with unfamiliar problems. Now, I'd like to see a desire in candidates. And so I really want to see them actually enjoying working in tech. For me, at least personally, it's more than a job. And I spend a decent amount of my free time, playing with technology, researching technology, etc. Now, I don't expect it to be absolutely their entire life, but I do want them to at least have some sort of natural inclination to do research and to just stay invested in the field, both inside and outside of work. And of course, I really like to see folks that are really invested in growing their careers. And I love the stories of CIOs or VPs or directors of IT that came up through a help desk, came up through an internship, something like that. That the skills that folks have, are always changing, but that actual motivation of, I want to do really good work, I want to impress my team, I want to keep getting promoted, all of that, that's not really something that you can train in someone. You can try and push a little bit, but at the end of the day, I've found that candidates generally kind of either have it or don't have it. Now, of course, there are difficulties that come up when you scale your team. And so there's a great article on the First Round Capital blog that touches in a little bit on this. And it's an article by someone who was, I think employee 10 or something at Facebook. And at one point, she was involved in just about everything. And as the company grew, and the company grew very rapidly, she had to divest herself from a lot of the core functions that she did when she started. She had to hire people to basically do her job, and she had to delegate, and she had to, quote, what she says, quote, giving up her Legos. And I find it's just a really, really powerful article that I suggest anyone in the field reads, because it deals a lot with the challenges when you're scaling a team of, the things like, this will never get done right if I don't do it myself. I can never trust that this department will do this right. Like, my team always has to do this. That's not really the case. It's okay to give up your Legos, because at the end of the day, even though you think you'll have nothing left, there's always something left. There's always more work to do. Now, of course, another difficulty is generally just transitioning from an IC, so from an individual contributor to a manager or to a leader. And that's not a transition for everyone. There are definitely folks that are better off just staying in individual contributors, for most of their career. There are others that are really natural managers and natural leaders. And so if you're thinking about your career, it's worthy of some soul searching about whether you want to manage people or whether you just want to stay more technical and more involved in the day-to-day. And then finally, even if you actually make a hire, say you make the best hire in the world, your time actually gets more stretched before it gets better. And so, imagine that, you hire a new help desk analyst on a very small team, and you're going to be the one that's training them. For that first 6, 8, 10, maybe 12 weeks, you're going to be giving them more than they're going to be giving the company. And they're not going to be taking a ton off your plate just yet because you're going to be investing in them. You are going to be spending time with them, cross-training them, showing them processes, getting them acquainted with people. And so it gets worse before it gets better. A new hire will actually take out more of your time for a decent amount of time before they actually start, giving back and saving you time. And so this is where I always stress that it's important for organizations to hire sooner than they actually may think, because if you have a big hiring blip coming up in 3 months, if you hire someone today, they may be productive in 3 months' time and able to deal with that big surge of requests. But if you wait until the last minute, you're going to be training them when you actually need them to be most efficient, most ready to go. And so never, ever forget the actual time for onboarding, how much time it takes for cross-training and all of that. And in general, go earlier than you think, because otherwise it's a great way to kind of shoot yourself in the foot. Now, a little bit more on some of the difficulties of scaling a team. So, you do have to make that time investment to cross-train and actually invest in your people. And I am a huge believer personally in my team going out and getting certifications, getting training, getting some sort of conference, attending some sort of conference. These are all really great professional development exercises that, in my mind at least, really encourage loyalty, encourage retention, and also allow your team to really massively grow their skill set and just deliver more value back to the organization. When I've bumped into conferences and I've talked with IT folks there, hearing from them about like how much they appreciate their managers sent them to the conference and how much they're really excited to give back to the company it's really heartwarming. And in general, for all of your direct reports, you really do want to know their career paths. And as I said on the earlier slide, some really want to go and become stay an individual contributor. Some are really looking to go into management, go into leadership. And just knowing where your team stands on that, with both kind of their aptitude and their actual desires on where they want to take their career. And even in a really small organization, it is really important to actually have a development path. And even if you're an IT team of 2, that one help desk analyst for you wants to know like what they need to take to graduate to more senior projects, what they need to do for a raise or a promotion. And so you're never really too small to do development paths, even if they are like very simple. They don't have to be the most involved thing in the world, but employees really love knowing that they have some sort of path upwards, that their manager is thinking about it, and that they have goals that they can hit and then rewards that they can get when they hit those goals. Awesome. So that was just a little bit about when to hire and how to scale. I am going into, okay, we've got a couple good questions here. So first off, Will. So Will was asking, can an IT hire be overqualified? What are some things to look out for? So Will, great question. And the short answer is yes, an IT hire can be overqualified. So I would not take someone with 10 years of Cisco experience and a bunch of Cisco certifications to do level one help desk. They may just get bored very, very quickly. And if you forget about the money, the compensation for a second, folks that are overqualified, do get bored and may not actually even have the lower level skill sets that you need for what you're hiring them for. However, I think it's important as you're looking at them as a candidate to actually dive in and figure out why they're overqualified. And so if they're looking to make more of a lateral, more of a sideways move within their career, that might be a good explanation for why they're overqualified. But it's definitely something I would dig into in the hiring process. And at times, yeah, it's definitely okay to walk away from an overqualified candidate. So, Will, I hope that answers your question. Okay, cool. James asked, for IT leadership roles, director and above, how do you think of promoting from within versus outside hires? So, James, another awesome question. So I would say first off that if you're able to promote from within for senior leadership, you're already doing something really right. That you have done a good job building out your team. If you feel someone is ready for the next step, especially for like a director or VP level, that's really awesome because in some ways that shows you've already done a lot of the right things. And personally, I am a fan of promoting from within because it definitely helps with kind of onboarding and the ramp up period. It definitely is a lot easier for someone to hit the ground running. However, there's also kind of a groupthink problem that organizations can end up with that if they only hire internally, they never hire anyone external that has some new ideas, that has different experience, then it's really easy to fall into that groupthink of, oh, this is how we've always done it. We're never going to change. And so there's a really good balance to be found that I would say promote from within when you can. And those are always successes, always really awesome. But also don't be afraid to look outside kind of for fresh ideas, fresh experience. And again, just find the right balance for your organization. Okay, Roberto asked, what are good IT communities to source IT hires? So, Roberto, let's see where to begin here. So, personally, I would actually start with some smaller, more intimate communities, depending on the level of IT hire. So, I'm a member of this Slack team called Mac Admins, and so you can find it on macadmins.org. And there's a really great jobs board on there, some really qualified candidates. That's a good place to start. Never hurts to post on LinkedIn and ask around your network. I'm personally a little dubious of some of the larger job sites like Indeed or Dice. I seem to get just a lot of recruiter spam on there and just not really high quality. So if you've had better luck there, good for you. But I generally try to ask within like the network of people that I actually know, not just all the fake people I've connected with on LinkedIn. And then also take a look. James and I are actually in the process of rebuilding IT Kit, and part of that is going to be a totally newly revamped jobs board. And so check out sometime in middle August. We're launching in about a month. The new IT Kit at itkit.io. And we'll have a pretty cool jobs board there as well. So definitely a cool place to post your jobs if you're looking for qualified candidates. So hope that helps, Roberto. Okay, cool. Hire a strong remote candidate versus a local experienced candidate. What are the trade-offs? Love it, Whitney. So personally, I happen to be really, really remote forward, like remote positive, but there are challenges in doing it in IT. And so, for more senior level of IT hires, remote works generally pretty awesome. If you're hiring someone to be the only IT person in the office and you really need them to go hands-on with a conference room or hands-on with a printer or something, like truly something that can't be fixed remotely, then I may have to take the less experienced kind of local candidate. But in general, I am a huge fan of strong remote candidates, just because you can find people that have skill sets that you would never be able to find hiring locally. And at times you can find like real bargains on candidates that, maybe are remote in somewhere that has a lower cost of living, et cetera, et cetera. So I would generally go with the stronger remote candidate, but if you really need someone to do on-site support, then you kind of have no choice to take the local candidate. So I hope that answers you, Whitney. Let's see. Outside of that, I know, Bobby, you asked, will the presentation be available? Yes, it will be available afterwards. We will email it out, both the slide deck and the recording and all of that stuff. And then I think I have time for one more question. So Nadia asked, is there a rule of thumb for how much a company should invest in IT? So that's hardware, software, and support. I hate to say it again, but it really does depend. If you're a really, really simple company, you can work, just on G Suite and just on Chromebooks, and I don't know, your publishing house or something like that, and you're just dealing with text all day. Your IT spend might be a lot lower than, if you're designing rocket parts and you need really fancy CAD workstations and a whole bunch of SAN storage and, dedicated support for 3D modeling and like all of that. So I guess it goes back to how complex the environment is and how complex, I guess, the business requirements are, that IT can be shockingly cheap or IT can be super, super expensive. It really depends on the business needs. The more technical heavy lifting the business needs and the more hands-on training that it needs, the more expensive IT will be. The simpler the environment and the more self-sufficient the business is using technology, of course, the less expensive IT will be. All right, awesome. So thank you all for the great questions. Look for the slides and the recording that we will send out afterwards. I just wanted to thank you so much for coming to the webinar. Quick reminder, check out the IT Kit podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, and check out itkit.io. Sometime in mid to late August, we'll be relaunching with a super awesome jobs board and all sorts of other fun stuff. In the meantime, if you guys have any other questions, you can find me on Twitter at TM Burke, or you can just email me, Tim, T-I-M, at atSpoke.com. If I didn't get to any of your questions, you want to have a longer discussion, would love to connect with you. Thank you so much, and have a great afternoon.